Hello and welcome to a new episode of Airport CEO here on BongoPlanes, where we today will be giving our Terminal 3 a lounge that we will also be doing at Terminal 2, but also a restaurant, and we will have a little fight with Alpha 35 and especially with the international zoning. As always, before we get too far into the video, if you should end up enjoying this video, then don't forget to leave a like. That would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, you're always welcome to hit subscribe. Right, over at Terminal 3, our VIP terminal for the German Air Force, also known as the Luftwaffe. Ages ago, I was building here what I was hoping to make into a lounge, although we didn't have the feature of having a lounge in the game at that time. So I had just started adding stuff here and then kind of wanted to pretend that it would be a lounge at some point when I would finish it. Now we have the feature of adding lounges, which is awesome. So that is what we will be doing. We have the space, we have already prepared quite a few tables and seating arrangements, which is great, saves time. And now we just need to firstly, of course, have the room. Then we will have this little entrance area where we have an information desk. We will have some floor mats with the Luftwaffe logo on. Very nice. We also have this little new feature with the statues. Awesome. And of course, for a lounge, you also need to have what is it called? The buffet tables, so that people can get food. One thing I have discovered there is that you have different small arrangements on them. So if you place two buffet tables next to each other, they won't look exactly the same, which I think is a lovely little touch from the developers. Also, of course, what we will be adding into the lounge is are two bathrooms, male and female, that then are exclusive for people or for passengers that are entering the lounge. For the interior, I try to do something a little bit different than to my usual style. I use, for example, the black clinker tiles, which I don't think I've ever used before, and then the dark blue mat, which I guess I've used quite often before, but still, I think it gives the room a little bit of a different feel, which I hope to have here. Since it's a lounge, it should look different than the rest of the terminal, and of course it's a VIP terminal, so it should also have that feel of at least being a little bit more upscale. Then of course a few more seating arrangements, and that's about it. Might not entirely have this upscale feel that I wanted to have, but I tried at least, and I mean, maybe you have an idea how we could make this more upscale. If you have, then let me know in the comment section below, because then we could change that in a future episode. This is supposed to have a VIP feeling, and some parts of it say for me yes, some parts not really. Yeah, again, if you have an idea, let me know. Now, a part of the airport that used to be very crowded and these days almost abandoned are the connection tunnels between the different terminal buildings. Now, they used to be extremely crowded because passengers were just arriving wherever they wanted and then basically were at the wrong part of the airport and had to walk quite far to get to their aircraft. Obviously now with the terminal update, that is a time gone, because now they arrive at the right terminal, because we actually have told the game, or the game has been able to register this is a terminal and this is a different terminal. However, we still have these tunnels, and if anyone should ever have to walk, it is quite a far distance. So I wanted to add these walkolators in there to make the journey a little bit more pleasant. Here we're working on the part between the tunnel connecting Terminal 2 with Terminal 3. That of course then continues over to Terminal 1, where we will also add a few walkolators. Again, so that we can at least make the journey a little bit more pleasant for those who should end up having to do that. Now, one thing that was also changed according to the developer blog in Alpha 35 is the accumulation of garbage, or how passengers are acting with garbage. Honestly speaking, I didn't quite understand what the difference was. I just know there is a difference, and that means that it seems to be more important to have enough garbage cans around so that passengers can get rid of the garbage they might produce or accumulate. I guess that does make sense, as it is pretty much as in real life. So we'll quickly also add a few garbage cans here in Terminal 3, because I don't think we had any here before that. At least at the areas where we know we have many passengers, especially passengers waiting, so check-in areas, and of course a baggage retrieval area. And then I think we will be heading over to Terminal 2. Now, over at Terminal 2, we had left these two rooms empty in anticipation of Alpha 35 and the introduction of lounges. So we will be using those two rooms for lounges. Two lounges. I think one is a little bit smaller than the other, but that's okay. So again here, I guess it follows a little bit the same procedure. We have an entrance area where we will have an information desk, then we will have some seating arrangements and the buffet tables, and of course also some private bathrooms. The entire wall facing inwards towards the terminal area is made out of windows. I think that's a nice little touch. One, in real life, of course, it would enable sunlight to actually get into those rooms. And of course, then the passengers sitting inside the terminals will be able to overlook the terminal, and passengers on the outside can enviously look into the lounge and at passengers enjoying the luxuries that a lounge has to offer. Now, the slightly bigger of the two lounges here, I think we will give to EasyJet. We have two contracts with EasyJet, so I just need to figure out which of the two EasyJets I want to give it to, because we will make another lounge for the other EasyJet, but at a different part of Terminal 2. The smaller of the two lounges we will then give to Enter Air. Now, when I was looking through the list of airlines that I could offer these lounges to, the list didn't comprise all the airlines we have signed contracts with. My suspicion is that this is also linked to airline satisfaction. So if you haven't reached a specific satisfaction level with an airline, they won't you won't be able to sign a lounge with them, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But I think following the game logic with pretty much everything else we've seen in the game, I think that's the most likely scenario. However, if I'm completely wrong here and you know why it would be that we don't have the ability, at least at the moment, to sign lounges with all airlines that we have at the airport, then let me know in the comment section below, but I'm fairly sure that it has to do with airline satisfaction. Anyway, so these two lounges are being constructed right now. As you can see here, we have added a second or first floor here at Terminal 2, only for a tiny little section, and that is where we will add a restaurant, which will have a lovely view over the airfield. Honestly speaking, originally I didn't intend to make a second floor here at Terminal 2, because the real Terminal 2 at Berlin-Tegel doesn't have it either, at least not as far as I know. But there is just no space for a restaurant, or at least a decent sized restaurant on ground floor level, so I thought, why not add it here? And then we of course also can be using the elevator feature which we have now, which is so lovely to have. Now, as we learned in the previous episode, the most important part when you are making a restaurant is the amount of cooking stations. That's really the main thing that will determine what kind of contract you will be able to sign. Obviously, the room size does also do something, but one of the requirements for getting a higher contract, or better contracts, let's say that is more higher star counted contracts, is the amount of cooking stations. All the other equipment that you can add into the restaurant doesn't seem to count into that, so that's just an optical part and a visual part to make it look nice. But the cooking stations, that's important that you get that right. At least you have the number of cooking stations that is required for the contract that you would like to sign. Now, I have been praising Alpha 35 quite much in the last two episodes, and I stand by what I said. I think it is a really awesome update, and I think overall the rollout has been really good. Obviously, there are a few things, especially the more time you spend with it, that you discover that you didn't see in the beginning. And there are small issues here and there. I think it's mainly with the zoning that bugs out a little bit in some cases. And I was also able to determine that the whole new zoning thing was also putting a considerable drain on performance when it came to the game. Especially the frame rate really dropped. I don't know if you remember 2 episodes ago I was saying saying that I had some issues with the frame rate being really awful. Now, there came a tiny little update since the release of Alpha 35, and since then the frame rate has massively improved. So I'm pretty sure that with the introduction of these new zones, the game was struggling a little bit, and that they have since then fixed that. What I have been struggling with a little bit was the terminal zoning. Now, I saw that some people were not just zoning the terminal buildings, but also all the stands. Now, I'm fairly sure that that is not necessary, because when you have zoned in a terminal, you actually can see what the zone has basically included, what it believes is part of that terminal. And as far as I understand, the logic is basically that if you have a boarding desk that is within your terminal zone, if that is connected to a stand that is outside of that terminal zone, it does understand that they are connected. But what is important is that you make sure that you zone in your vehicle depots to the terminal that you want them to be assigned to. It does really massively help you out. Now, I struggled with the international gates. Basically, you have the international zone, and for them to work, you also need to switch your gates over to being international or operating international flights. So I tried to zoning in some stands here that I wanted to operate international flights, but that didn't give me the option, and I was struggling really hard. I just could not get the option to switch them to being operating international flights. Luckily, there was a comment referring me to a different YouTuber, Exact Chaos, who has a lovely playlist of the game where he goes through many of the features of Alpha 35. And basically what you need to do is to open your game menu and then go to game settings, and there you find realistic international stands. Now, it was already activated with me, but I needed to toggle it again or activate it again. And after I did that, voila, I finally had the option to activate international stands. Why that didn't work from the beginning, I'm not quite sure. I guess it just bugged out with the update, who knows. But if you have the same issue and you just, for the life of you, just can't get these international stands, then check that out, and that should fix it. Another thing I needed to fix was the amount of GSE that I had. Basically, I had enough GSE for all aircraft, however, I didn't have the exact right type. Basically, for example, large pullback truck or pushback truck only works with wide-body aircraft. I guess I could have figured that out on my own, but I just assumed that perhaps it would do both. It doesn't. So I had too many, for example, large pushback trucks and too few of the medium or small ones. So I just needed to update that. Of course, that meant also having more GSE. So what we also had to do was just add a few more vehicle depots for Terminal 1, and then of course making sure that they are zoned in so that the game registers these vehicle depots as being part of Terminal 1. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to do was to add a few more stands that would be operating international flights. At the moment we only have the wide-body stands doing that, and I also wanted to have a few medium stands doing that. So the first thing, of course, we had to do was to add the passport checkpoints. For that, I was using the automated ones and only automated ones, just to, well, basically save tasks here, so we wouldn't have to have additional tasks for staff. Then, of course, having to zone it all in, and that would end up giving me a few problems, but we will talk about that in just a moment. What I also wanted to do was I wanted to change the layout of the boarding desks. At the moment we have the normal boarding desk, or the medium boarding desk, I guess I call it. And I wanted to change that so we would also have some automated boarding desks here. For that, of course, I needed to close the stands, which would also come back to haunt me in just a moment. But first we had to send away these aircraft because they were bugged out. They just had never left. So we had to dismiss them to get rid of them. So we could close the stands. By closing the stands, you're able to have or to remove the boarding desks. So after having done that, we removed them, and then we replaced them with a small boarding desk and then two automated boarding desks. Now, these boarding desks are then connected via the bus stop to the stand. I managed to do so for one of them. The other ones just kept saying that they were not in the same zone. They basically didn't recognize that they would be an international stand, and I just could not make that work. I don't know why, it just would not work. It didn't matter what I was doing, it didn't work. Honestly speaking, what I suspect is that the issue is that when you're doing these zones, the game it bugs out a little bit. If you, for example, make one international zone, it says this is international zone 1. If you then want to extend that and you just drag out a new international zone, it says this is international zone 2. And sometimes it just doesn't figure out that this is connected. Because what I could see is that for one of the boarding desks, it did recognize that it was connected to the passport checks, but for the other ones it said it didn't. So I might have to try to zone it out once again, and I might also have to try to place the passport checks down again, and maybe also with one manned. Maybe it doesn't like if you have no manned passport checks at all. Well, I will have to check it out. The only thing I can also say is that from the time of recording this footage, after I had done so, there was actually another little update to the game which might have fixed some issues with the zonings, but I haven't been able to try that out. So if we're lucky, I'll be able to fix this all before we get to the next episode. In any case, of course, as always, if you have any tips or know something that I'm doing completely wrong, then let me know in the comment section below. Also, what you're seeing right now, I should point out, is basically something I recorded before I toggled the game setting menu, and that's why I didn't have the option for the international stands, but I still had this issue with the zonings even after I had toggled the option for the international stands, so that didn't fix the issue here with the zonings for whatever reason. Alright, so I did actually also record how I was constructing another lounge for Terminal 2, and I did also build a restaurant in our little building that we have in the middle of Terminal 1. But as the episode is getting a bit long now, I think we will save that for the next episode. So with that, I'd like to end today's episode. Of course, if you have enjoyed the video, then you're very welcome to hit that like button. That really does help us out. And of course, if you are new around here, you're always welcome to hit subscribe. So Alpha 35 still great. A few issues with the zonings, but as always, these things are actually fixed rather quickly by the game developers. So I am very confident that all these small issues we are encountering here, we will overcome in the next couple of episodes. Now with that, thank you so much for having watched this video. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.